Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you to the MattVidPro AI YouTube channel. So what this video is a sort of mega guide to large language models in their current state. We're going to talk about what they are, how to interact with them, the best ways to have productive conversations with them, and how to customize them to work for you. Out of all of the AI models that exist, my favorite has to be the large language model. After all, guys, how you think with your mind is language, is it not? So pretty much any AI, whether it be a image generation AI, an audio generation AI, has to go through language at some point to be able to communicate with us so we can use it. Large language models are the foundation of the technology that is going to change our world in the future. So my goal is with this guide that you guys will be able to figure out how to make these large language models work great for you. Without further ado, let's dive in. First up, what is a large language model anyways? I found this little infographic by Investopedia. A large language model, or LLM, is a deep learning algorithm that is equipped to summarize, translate, predict, and generate human-sounding text to convey different ideas and concepts. A lot of people think about these language models as a database full of information from the world, and that is absolutely true, but what they forget is that the deep learning took all of this information that it gathered through text from books, the internet, all kinds of different sources, and actually figured out novel connections in between them. And that's where the magic comes from. From its training, it has the ability to predict text that has never been written before, and thus it can take two very abstract ideas and bring them together into a new idea, and that's essentially what creativity is. So these things are quite magical. In the beginning of large language models, they weren't really that great, not nearly as good as we see today with GPT 3.5 and 4, and, well, who knows, by this point you're watching the video, GPT 5 might be out. And of course, I'm just referencing the OpenAI large language models. There are literally hundreds of large language models, and we will dive into that later. This is an example of an early large language model, the first one that I ever personally interacted with. You can see the way this works is we have an input and then an output that the AI generates. Now in the input, if I type something in such as, "It was a gorgeous," what do you think the next line is going to be? Well, it's probably going to be day, because that's a common saying for people to make. So what does the large language model produce? As you can see, the output here, "It was a gorgeous day," exactly what we have predicted, and then it starts to go off on its own little book or something. "She recalls the sun came up and the people started marching. The soldiers were shouting, 'You must be gay,' and everybody was angry. So we went back to our hotel where we were eating lunch." Yeah, you could see the early large language models were quite random and not very well aligned with what we wanted them to do. What we see today, chat. You see, this model is not a chat model, it's just a large language model, so any text that you give it in the input, it's going to try to complete, essentially. It's a completion model. Modern day models are instruct chat models. We prefer models like these because they're so much easier to talk to. I can just talk to it like a person, tell me about the history of cherry cola, and the AI model will respond to me exactly as I would expect. The cool part about a chat model, though, is it can still complete text. We just have to instruct it to complete the following text, and it will be able to interpret this and complete that same exact task that the previous model did while maintaining the chat human-like qualities. And as you can see, it is quite a lot better at the task as well, because these models have come a long way. You can instruct this thing however you want, so we can even take this a step further. Complete the following text as if Albert Einstein was writing it. As you can see, a completely different result, custom tailored to our instructions. This is the beauty of large language models. Large language models are an infinitely malleable Swiss Army knife that can be applied to pretty much any language problem. The only limits lie within the model's knowledge. This would be like what I referred to, its base knowledge that it was trained on and all the connections it made while training. A lot of times you might think that you've run into the limits of the large language model, but in reality you just have to pry the information that you're looking for out of the large language model by prompting it more efficiently or more effectively. Now, typically, the better you are at explaining things, the better results you're going to get. This is where we come into understanding the limitations of our very language that we speak and how the AI model interprets it. Let's create a hypothetical scenario where you're trying to come up with names for a science fiction novel that you wrote. If you prompt it like Google, it's actually going to work against you. What you put in really is what you get out of these models. So if I just type in names for a science fiction novel, oftentimes, especially with more complex problems, it's not just going to inherently understand what you want. So these names are cool and all, but let's say they don't really connect with our specific science fiction novel. If we come up with a prompt that better explains the context of what we want, we can get a much better result out of this thing and a much more custom-tailored one towards what we're expecting. So I suggest to start out like this. These examples are great and all. This confirms to the AI that I like the track of thinking that it's on right now. However, and then I can fill in some details about my book. This is much needed context for the AI to understand what exactly we are looking for. So in this random example, my science fiction novel is about an alien starfish named Glorious. He was catapulted into space in an accident involving another alien species visiting his planet, who are later revealed to be humans, where he trespasses by visiting their ship. And we might have something in mind like, this is a humorous novel, let's say. It's not a very serious science fiction novel. The science fiction is humorous and lighthearted and directed towards young readers aged 8 to 14. Now, these results are going to be much more custom tailored around what I am looking for. So we got some results, and this more or less actually looks like a breakdown of the characters, different starships, and planets that might be in the novel. So it looks like it's not really understanding what we want, again, because of our first prompt that really didn't break that down, just names for a science fiction novel. So what I'll say is, no, keep the same instructions provided in my last response, but actually, I am looking to just name the novel. It is already written in this scenario. And here we go. Now we get some better results out of this thing. Oh, this one's particularly good. A Starfish's Guide to the Galaxy. I love that. And this could even give us another idea. And this is something I encourage you to do when you're working with large language models, is build off of the things that you see it do well. I really like the subtle nod that number 8 brings. Please give me 10 more examples like that. If you're looking for titles that subtly reference classic science fiction while maintaining a lighthearted and whimsical tone, here are some. And it gives us even more. You can see with these results, we've really tapped into some of that magic that an LLM can provide us. Again, this brings us back. We have that baseline information that the AI was trained on. We have the idea of starfish, spacemen, and classic science fiction novels. The AI has trained on all these concepts so well that it can creatively come up with something like A Starfish's Guide to the Galaxy, a creative nod towards a classic science fiction novel while maintaining this humorous tone. It's doing multiple things at once. I think the best way for a beginner to start getting better results out of the large language model they're working with is to give it the context of the situation, explain to it, this is what I'm trying to do, this is what I want to accomplish, and give it as many little details as possible. Picture it like you're commissioning a human to actually do the work for you. What are the materials that another human would need to accomplish this task? Now, you might be thinking, well, that's great and all, but which large language model do I use? Well, lucky for you, I have used quite a few of them, and will provide you a nice comprehensive list of both free and paid options in this video. So we'll start right off with the free options for everyday users. My first recommendation to anyone who wants to start using a large language model is going to be the free version of ChatGPT. This is the most popular large language model, point blank period. It's also one of the best. OpenAI does a great job with these things. However, they are not the only ones out there, and we will definitely get into the circumstances when you should use alternatives to OpenAI models. The free version of ChatGPT is quite simple here. We have access to this model, GPT 3.5, and we can talk to it just as you saw me in those first examples. I mean, we can ask this thing anything, right? Do you think Abraham Lincoln would have liked to use ChatGPT? Immediately from ChatGPT 3.5, we get a decent result that makes a lot of sense from a large language model system, but it needs to be prompted fairly well to understand what you're trying to ask it. So instead of asking 3.5 if Abraham Lincoln would have liked to use ChatGPT, come up with a hypothetical scenario where Abraham Lincoln uses ChatGPT. The format should be a large script. And with some good prompting, we can see that we actually get a nice response with exactly what we're looking for out of GPT 3.5. 3.5. So while this model might not be great for implicitly understanding what you're looking for with correct prompting, especially the type of prompting that I showed you in the first part of this video, your results are absolutely going to blow your mind if you've never used these before, especially. So Abraham Lincoln discovers ChatGPT. ChatGPT generates a detailed response providing insights on the Civil War, public sentiment, and potential strategies for the current State of the Union. I like it. So yeah, what's great about the free version of ChatGPT is that it's super easy to use. Anyone with a Google account or an OpenAI account can log in. Decent model, and it's completely free with some organization as well. We can rename, share, or delete chats. And of course, the option is always there to upgrade to the more advanced features that you will get with Plus, which is $20 a month. We'll get into Plus later. Oh, and this is also pretty important. You can also access ChatGPT for free on your iOS or Android device. You just have to download the ChatGPT app and you can log in and you'll have all of your chats synced from your computer to your phone to whatever device you might be using ChatGPT on. Now, one of the limits that these AI models possess is called context length. You might be wondering, can I just talk to these things forever? The answer is going to be yes, but eventually it will lose context over time. For example, with the current free version of ChatGPT, if I mention, a rubber duck at the beginning of the conversation and, thousands of characters down the road, I ask it what the first thing was that I mentioned, it's not going to tell you about that rubber duck because it is out of its context window. Some apps have tried to incorporate long-term memory in a few different ways, but at least currently, it's still something that is being experimented with. I think this graph right here might help you guys understand it just a little bit better, even though it is a little bit outdated. Right here, you can see GPT 3.5, which is the model we were just interacting with in ChatGPT. As you can see, it has a context length of 4K, or 4,000 tokens. A token, more or less, is just a chunk of text. As you can see here, they're all split up. So language is one token, learning is one token, models is one token. This LLMs in brackets is made up out of 4 tokens. On average, every 100 tokens is about 75 words. So if we go back to this graph, GPT 3.5, the free version of ChatGPT has a context length of about 3,500 words, which is definitely a lot for many tasks. However, I can't, paste Wikipedia articles or books into the thing and ask it questions about those books. In June 2023, something called Claude happened. Now, like I said, this graph is actually a little bit outdated, but this all leads us up to our next free large language model, which is Claude 2. Now, currently, Claude 2 by Anthropic sports a whopping 200K context length, or around 150,000 words of context. So yes, you can paste books into this thing. It actually has an upload here, 5 maximum PDFs, text files, CSVs, etc. This thing is designed to do a lot of text. So Claude 2 will take the entirety of a Wikipedia page, and I can prompt it to take that content and do something with it. You'll see if you try to do the same thing to ChatGPT, it gives you an error saying the message you submitted was too long. Now, this changes with ChatGPT Plus. However, with the free version of ChatGPT, you cannot do crazy long context lengths like this. That's why we need Claude 2. Write me a brief history of LLMs utilizing the provided text from the perspective of an LLM in the year 2067. And as you can see, this thing's quite capable. It'll spit out a decent answer for us, but I found it does have some limitations in comparison to ChatGPT. It'll produce answers that I found are a little bit shorter sometimes. It may hallucinate a little bit more. It might not be all the way there on the creativity side at all times. Just like individual people, these things do have their own benefits and downsides, but still extremely capable, and I've used it for a ton of work that required very large amounts of context, book pages worth. A cool feature about chat here on Anthropic is that you can actually manage the content that is inside of it. So I can go back and look through everything that I might have pasted into the AI. And of course, just like ChatGPT, you do have an area where you can go delete chats and start new chats. So it's not like your chats are lost to time. They are all linked to your account. Next up, for free AI, I do have to give Bard a little bit of attention. Now, as far as AI models go, a lot of people like to knock Bard. In reality, Google Bard does have some capabilities that it it possesses over both Claude and the free version of ChatGPT, and they are worth mentioning. First up, the free version of Google Bard does have image uploading. Now, it's not as good as the paid version of ChatGPT right now. However, you can upload and have it interpret images for completely free, and this is pretty magical. In this example, I'll upload a photo of a cat. I can say, please describe this image to me. It's going to look at that image and then give us a nice result. Close-up of an orange tabby cat's face, big green eyes. Well, the eyes aren't exactly green, but they are wide open, looking directly at the camera, pink nose, orange, white, and brown fur, curious and alert expression. That's pretty accurate. So yeah, it has image recognition capabilities. Bard also has a few other features that you don't typically get. The first is that every response out of Bard gets you 3 drafts that you can pick from, and you can easily regenerate the drafts. It's a nice feature. You don't get this kind of array with ChatGPT, and if you get a bad response, usually one of your other drafts will have a pretty decent response. You'll also see this little audio button. You can actually listen to all of your responses with Bard. It can kind of talk to you like a person.
Sure, I can describe the image you sent me. The image shows a close-up of an orange tabby cat's face. The cat has big, green eyes that are wide open and looking directly at the camera. Its nose is pink and its fur is a soft orange.
Yeah, you kind of get the point. This is great for, first of all, accessibility for those who are impaired, and sometimes it can just be a little bit more easy on the eyes. Instead of reading all that text, you can just listen to it. You'll also notice down here that it will sometimes show up little Google search links, and in this case, it seems to be some similar looking images from a wallpaper website. You can also modify your response. So let's say I want it shorter, let's say I want it longer, let's say I want it more simple, more casual, or more professional. In this case, we'll do more casual. Essentially, that's just a hot click for getting different types of responses out of the model. Bard can also research things. It actually has connection to the internet. It is made by Google after all, so I can ask it questions that are definitely not inside of its pre-trained database, like how many subscribers does MattVidPro have? And it actually gives us some pretty up-to-date result, around 240,000 subscribers. As you can see, they have this system where it tries to automatically double-check responses, and I think that's also pretty cool, especially given the search feature. You want to make sure everything is correct, because it can hallucinate things, and Bard especially has been known to do that as a large language model, more so than both Claude and GPT 3.5. For those of you that don't know what a hallucination is, it's both a good thing and a bad thing for large language models. We don't want it to hallucinate facts that aren't true and then spout them to you as if they were true. Like if I asked it about the channel MattVidPro AI, it might hallucinate an AI named MattVidPro that is, an artificial content creator or something like that. I've seen it do that before. That's not real. It's just something it made up. In that scenario, it spouts it as if it's true, and we don't want it to do that. However, we do want it to hallucinate when it's doing a creative task, for example. If I say, come up with an AI content creator idea, and it'll hallucinate all this stuff, and that's what I'm looking for. So there's kind of a give and take there, and it turns out that because Bard hallucinates more often on real facts, it's actually a very creative model under the hood and does creative tasks quite well. Now, Bard also has extensions, which is pretty cool, so it can go actually access information in your Google workspace, it can access Google Flights, YouTube, Google Maps, etc. So these are all connections that it can also access inside of the AI when you're chatting with it. Definitely can serve as useful and something you don't get with the free version of ChatGPT, at least right now. Again, this could be all different in the future. This stuff does evolve very quickly, so I do recommend you double check, especially if you're watching, a year into the future. I do want to touch on a few more free ones. First one's going to be pi.ai/talk. This is a very simple large language model. It's a lot more human than the others, and it will just talk to you right off the bat. So it'll say, how's your day going? I can tell it something, and it will respond very naturally.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a perfect day. What a sweet way to spend an afternoon, and the reward of a warm, freshly baked apple pie is unbeatable. How was the apple picking experience? Did you find any particularly juicy ones?
This one's really supposed to be like you're talking to a human, so if that's the kind of experience you're looking for, definitely check out pi.ai. Now, we also should talk about Copilot, which is another free AI. This is powered by Microsoft and OpenAI together. We can see a bunch of different options right off the bat here. They have different conversation styles, balanced, creative, or precise. Believe if you set it to creative, you will be using GPT-4, which is important to note. So this might actually give you free GPT-4 access. They also have plugins for this as well. They also have plugins with stuff like Instacart, Kayak, Klarna, etc. And this thing can also use Bing to search the web. So again, a little bit more capability than you get with your free version of ChatGPT, but I think also a little bit more complicated for beginners. Finally, I have to mention this site as well for completely free, Character.ai. This is a huge community where they actually create their own AI, and of course you can create one if you make an account for completely free. Tens of thousands of different AI chatbots that you can talk to who truly believe they are the characters that they are said to be. So for example, we could talk to Socrates here, and he probably won't believe that he is an AI chatbot, but you can try to convince him if you want. But if this is more the thing you're looking for, community-made chatbots that can do a number of different things, become famous characters, become new types of characters, or even be a novel writer or a text adventure game, that is all accessible on this website for free. And I should touch on this form of free AI as well if you're a developer. Mistral AI is pretty much the place to be with free open source large language models. They do great stuff, but the open source AI world is evolving so rapidly that this could change this year. This could change in a few months, a few weeks even. Still, they've been really solid so far, and I definitely recommend checking out their models if you're into development, training your own AI models, stuff like that. This is where I would start. However, I'm not diving too deep on these open source models because this video is really aimed more towards the beginners or people who haven't really experienced large language models yet. Now let's move on to the paid large language models. Now, as you have no doubt just seen, you actually get a lot of free capabilities. There's tons of free AI out there. So honestly, I really don't recommend you start paying for large language models until you're really experienced with them and decide that you want those extra capabilities. Otherwise, it's just not worth it. Especially with the ChatGPT Plus starting at $20 a month here, and this is the one that I recommend the most. So yeah, this is ChatGPT Plus. You definitely get a lot more capabilities than just your regular ChatGPT, or even from Claude, for example, or Bing, or Google Bard. There is a lot here. First up, access to the GPT-4 model. It is really, really good. You also have web browsing with this model, generation with DALL-E 3, which is a phenomenal AI image generator, so that's all built right in here. You're limited to 40 messages every 3 hours, though, which is really annoying, honestly, which makes you, feel stressed to make the most out of your prompts. Kind of annoying. This is one of the best, if not the best, AI model that currently exists. It is really great. It's really awesome at implicitly understanding things. It's really awesome at the truth and logic section. It's also a quick model. It has a high context as well. It is super creative. All around, phenomenal. It is important to note that the context window for GPT-4, the paid version of ChatGPT, is just a little bit smaller than you get with Claude. However, it's typically better at utilizing that context window than Claude is. It's still around 100,000 tokens though, which is like 300 pages of context, something like that. So still, you can upload a ridiculous amount of information to this thing and it will be able to use it. You can also upload images to this thing just like Google Bard. And this image recognition model is quite a bit better than the one that you're getting with Bard right now. Although it costs money, there's just a lot more understanding and nuance that it's able to pull from the images you upload. Close-up photograph of a dog, absolutely true, likely a small breed. It's a much more detailed description than you typically get with Bard. Yup, and as typical, it can guess the breed even from this image spot on. Something that I've not seen Google Bard really be able to do accurately. Of course, we also have that DALL-E 3 integration, like I said. Create an image just like this one with DALL-E. And you can see with the image that DALL-E created, it's pretty close to the image that I uploaded. Definitely lots of resemblance in there, but I think this does give you guys a pretty good idea of what we get right off the bat by upgrading to the $20 a month ChatGPT Plus subscription. But there's actually even more we get access to than just this fantastic model that can accept images, lots of text, and is really, really great. We also get access to the brand new GPTs store, which has thousands of custom GPTs that are created by the community here. You can search for some, you can find different ones for DALL-E writing, productivity. I did a full video on this, of course, but essentially these are custom tailored AIs that can do any number of different tasks for you. This is honestly, to me, a huge selling point towards ChatGPT Plus, and I think it's a huge reason you might consider getting it, especially because you can create your own, and they will have revenue sharing for that as well. Take this one for example. Make me a flowchart that represents the life cycle of a tree, and this is diagrams show me, which is a pretty cool little GPT. And there we go. It makes me a diagram right off the bat. Seed, germination, sapling, mature tree, flowering, fruiting, seed dispersal, back to seed, or decay. Quite wonderful, and it only gets crazier from there. Again, I won't go over everything. If you want to see some cooler GPTs, I recommend you check out my full video on it. And as of right now, that's actually it. That's the only large language model that I think you should be paying for right now, really. I am going to give you some honorable mentions. A lot of the, or most of the free models that I mentioned do have paid subscriptions as well to get more features, so if you end up liking one of those more, maybe that would be something you're interested in, but I'll give you some honorable mentions, but really the only one I truly spend money on right now is going to be ChatGPT Plus. I'm sure that people will flood the comments with their own recommendations, but right now, that's pretty much my favorite. This is absolutely a huge tool that I want to mention here. Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365. This is a large language model that integrates directly to Microsoft 365. If you use 365 for work, even for school, it could really be worth it to invest in this Microsoft Copilot for 365. As you can see, not exactly the cheapest here, $30 per month. However, you're getting integration with Teams, Word, Outlook, PowerPoint, Excel, and other apps. I haven't tested it out personally. If you use 365, this could be massive for productivity, especially if you own your own business. I will also make a special mention here to the Grok AI, of course, developed by X or Twitter. I haven't tested it myself, but from what I hear, it's nothing too special, kind of on that same level as the free version of ChatGPT, but you have to pay for it inside of Twitter, which kind of stinks. One thing I do really like about the Grok AI, though, is that it has this response tree over here on the side where you can see how your conversations with the AI branch off, and you can actually explore different avenues or different realities where you said something different to the AI. And I think that's a really, really cool way of interacting with the LLM, and it's probably my favorite feature of Grok. So if you pay for Grok, that's probably why I would actually end up getting it, is to experience this. I do have faith that Grok will be expanded in the future just because they made this in general. Like, this is so cool. So I think if we see more features like this, and if they improve the model as a whole, it could be, a real AI worth paying for. Only other thing with Grok is that it is relatively uncensored in comparison to some of the other large language models. So if that is something that you're looking for, Grok might very well be your solution. Another worthy mention here is Freedom GPT. This is a pay-as-you-go AI model that is meant to be completely uncensored. It's not a really good LLM, but like I said, if you're looking for that lack of censorship, this one is completely uncensored and can also run at home for completely free. You'll also see here that they have access to a ton of models. You can access DALL-E 3 in this thing, Medusa uncensored image generator as well, Phone Call GPT, a music model, some other LLMs as well. And finally, we'll touch on nat.dev. This is another actually really fantastic website. I don't really pay for it anymore, but it is a pay-as-you-go system where you just kind of put money into it like a change machine, and then you have your money and you slowly spend whatever you use in the API over time. They do actually have some free models in here, I believe, but yeah, essentially, you can access any number of AI models here, a ton of them. You can actually drag race them against each other, directly compare them against the same exact prompt while adjusting lots of fine-tuning settings. So this is more for when you are well acquainted with LLMs and want to experiment with them. You have a ton of settings that you can adjust here. Temperature, top P, top K, these are things that I've talked about in other videos. Honestly, if you're interested in this stuff, I would check out my original open playground video. They, of course, do have a chat here as well, so you can talk to these things just like you would ChatGPT, but again, with the ability to adjust all of these different settings or change the model to whatever I want it to be. And then the playground here is actually completion like the beginning of this video, where we can essentially type anything we want, and even if it is a chat model, it will try to complete it, which is pretty cool. Definitely a really cool website. If you want to experiment with all the different LLMs and compare them, this is the spot to do it for sure. But I mentioned it towards the end here because it's not really geared towards beginners. Alright guys, so that's that. A pretty big, lengthy guide to large language models. Again, I didn't really even get into some of the more specific stuff like those settings you saw at the end, so that's something I could do in another video. I've talked about it in previous videos on this channel, but it's something I'd be willing to do in a more formal format. For a lot of you, I really hope this was a gateway into interacting with AIs, specifically large language models. They are a ton of fun to work with, and they are even more useful in day-to-day life. I use them almost every single day. Trust me, they will change your life. Thank you so much for watching this video. Definitely check out the rest of the channel, check out my community on my Discord server, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.